Council, officers of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Worship, the Mayor of Nuneaton and Bedworth, Councillor Martin Walsh.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this full council meeting of the 13th of December, last full meeting of the year. Thank you very much indeed. We're not expecting a fire drill, but if one should happen, fire alarms should go off. Will you please evacuate the chamber as quickly, as calmly as possible, leaving by the door you entered through or those doors clearly marked with a fire exit sign. If you need assistance, please ask one of the officers to help. Please gather outside the town hall on the opposite side of the road by Lloyd's Bank. Thank you very much indeed. This meeting is not being live streamed, but it is being recorded for future reference. I would ask you also to turn your phones off or onto silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you very much. And just for the public's knowledge, because it's the last meeting of this year, councillors are allowed to wear their Christmas attire. Thank you all, and for those who've done so. Item 1. Item 2. We have two apologies, Councillor Evans and Councillor Cape. I'm not aware of any other. Yes, Councillor.
Councillors Tracy Shepherd, Councillor Stuart Shepherd and Councillors Neil Phillip.
Thank you. That's fine. Okay, item number 3, minutes of the previous. We have two sets of minutes. We have one from the 13th of December, 13th of September, which is in your addendum, page 3 in your addendum. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Thank you, Councillor. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Are we all happy to any matters arising from that or any questions on that in terms of accuracy? Okay, we all happy with that? Thank you very much. I shall sign that off. Thank you. We then have the extraordinary meeting as of 15th of November, again in the addendum. A proposer for that one, please. Thank you, Councillor. Seconder. Thank you. Everybody happy with the minutes as is? Indeed. Indeed. Thank you very much. I shall sign those off. Thank you. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any other declarations of interest from any member that's not already written in the schedule? Or any variation? Councillor Troman.
Representation on an outside body. I'm Warwickshire County Council's representative on the West Midlands Combined Authority Transport, OSC. Thank you.
Any other? Thank you. Item number 5. Announcements. I don't have any announcements personally. Councillor Wilson.
As has become something of a custom for council at Christmas, as you have noted earlier, Mr Mayor, that members tend to wear Christmas jumpers and that they pay for the privilege towards the incumbent mayor's charity, and those of us who have not worn a Christmas jumper pay a suitable penalty in compensation for not being as festive as the rest. I'm delighted to confirm and hand over to yourself, Mr Mayor, now that we have £230 collected for your charity this evening. So I'll just hand that over to you for safekeeping and banking.
It will go to a worthwhile cause, as you well know. I thank you. Councillor Clark, do you have something as an item?
A slight while, but I have the opportunity to present you my item for the silver collection this evening. It's finally come through, so if you'd be kind enough to accept it, Mr. Mayor, I'd be very grateful.
Again, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Clark. Well appreciated. Do I have any other member? Councillor Golby. Thank you.
This is kind of hot off the press, and it's in relation to Cleaver Gardens, the long-running saga of Cleaver Gardens. So, as we all know, the highways and footpath in question surrounding Cleaver Gardens has been a bone of contention for many, many years. Discussions have been ongoing with Warwickshire County Council for quite some time, but this is all in relation to maintenance responsibilities of highways and footpaths. And following some very recent and intensive discussions, we took a slightly different angle to an approach. And I'm very pleased to say we have come to an agreement. So our agreement is that instead of continuously arguing about where we go and what we do and who has what, we've agreed that the HRA from the housing revenue account in my portfolio will contribute 50% of the costs to bringing the highways and footpaths up to an adoptable standard. County will contribute the other 50% of those costs, and then they will finally adopt the highways and footpaths of Cleaver Gardens. And all future maintenance responsibilities will then lie with the County Council. This proposal has been agreed and we are waiting to sign on the paperwork. So when the ink is dry, we have then got a solid agreement, but I'm just bringing this to Council's attention now because it has been such a long-running and arduous task on this. So I'm happy to share that news. The paperwork has gone over to County. They have indicated that they're all happy with the decision. We're happy with the decision. And I'm pleased that we can finally move forward on this. Again, once the ink is dry, highways we can finally put this one to bed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's on that, and by the sounds, it's a very good result. Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
We have took part in the jumper celebrations. We still have a contribution to give to the Mayor's Charity Safe Approach.
Councillor Rob Tromans. Thank you.
News that matters in respect of Cleaver Gardens and the roads and the footpaths and the highway maintenance has been resolved. I would like to thank the portfolio holder for all her efforts and hard work with this. I think that's an excellent result. I really appreciate that the Cabinet have pushed forward with this, and I'd also like to thank officers at County Highways for finally coming to an agreement. I think it's a good resolution to a very long-running problem that people had failed to resolve before. So my thanks to all involved.
It is indeed very great news that Cleaver Gardens has finally been sorted, and this process has been started many, many years ago. I think Councillor Watkins took part in kicking it off, so I think it should be a cross-party support, and thanks for getting it all done. But also it's important that we actually know the details, and I have been putting members' inquiry requests in, and emails to Dawn Dawson to actually find out what's going on and been refused to be told. So I think it's unfortunate that it's announced tonight, and I would like the council to actually release details to councillors so we can see which areas are adopted, because obviously it's not every part of Cleaver Gardens. Some of it still rests with the housing revenue account, like the car park. So it's great news, but I think the officers should brief the borough councillors for Weddington as to exactly what this deal means. Thank you.
Do we have any other announcements? No, I know as such it wasn't an announcement, but we follow on to item number 6, which is public participation. We have 2 members of the public. Mrs. Condacor, I believe you wish to speak.
Thank you. How many empty retail premises in council ownership are there in the borough, including those that have been vacated for the stalled Bridge to Living project in Nuneaton? And how many additional retail units will the council be building if all the regeneration projects go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Condacor. Councillor Wilson.
We currently have 3 vacant retail commercial units empty in Nuneaton town centre, and a total of 14 other empty units as part of the acquisitions made to support the redevelopment plans at Grayson Place, Abbey Street and the Bridge to Living schemes. This means that, subject to the financial viability work that is underway, we'll be in a position to move quickly to get construction underway should we be able to meet the financial obligations. The retail element of Grayson Place is designed to offer flexible retail units which can be used to meet the needs of the occupiers, unlike the traditional bricks and mortar units. As such, it is difficult to say exactly how many units this will create at this stage, as it will very much be based on the demand and requirements of the occupiers. Obviously, once they start working with us and show an interest, we can then work with them on their specific requirements. The Bridge to Living scheme is aiming to replace the dated retail units with modern incubation or what are commonly known as starter spaces to cater for all commercial work rather than traditional retail. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We have another question from Mr. Mark Axon. Thank you, Mr. Axon.
Thank you. This question is on behalf of the Nuneaton Borough Supporters Cooperative. As you may be aware, the Nuneaton Borough Football Club is currently unable to play home matches in the town at Liberty Way due to a dispute with the ground owner, Arden Tigress Limited. This situation threatens the very existence of the town's football club, and it is at a critical juncture. The borough have a strong place in the heart of the community, whether this be the club's dedicated fan base who have been travelling outside of the town to see the club's home fixtures, those who keep an eye on the club's results and fortunes, or those with relatives who play for one of the club's junior sides. As highlighted in the fan-led review of football governance, which was mentioned in the King's speech last month, football clubs are an integral part of a town's cultural identity and heritage, and more involvement from local government is required to ensure that they're safeguarded. We know that the council share this belief, as seen for their ongoing support to Nuneaton Griff through their lease of the Pingles, and Bedworth United through the leasing of the Oval, as well as agreeing to lift the covenant on the borough's old Manor Park ground, following a recommendation from councillors in order to move to the new Liberty Way site 17 years ago. Earlier this month, Frome Town Council won the Football Supporters Federation Non-League Award for their efforts in buying the football club's ground, and Scunthorpe United's Glanford Park Stadium has recently been brought into community ownership thanks to the efforts involving North Lincolnshire Council and their local MP. Whilst back in May, Bury Council part-funded the purchase of Gig Lane for Bury FC. Through the work of the Supporters Cooperative, the stadium at Liberty Way is listed as an asset of community value with the Nuneaton and Borough Bedworth Council, and there is a renewal application being processed now. As you may be aware, this means that the supporters and community could bid to buy the stadium should it become available for sale, and gives the local planning authority powers to stop the land being changed to other uses. Should the council believe that the Nuneaton Borough FC is important to the town and its people, would they be able to support the club, support with any of the following in order to secure the ground and the future of the football club? Support support the Supporters Cooperative renewal of the asset of community value status for Liberty Way and ensure that it is in the high in the minds of the planning department. The council could send a united message to the ground owner and football club to work towards resolving the dispute so that Nuneaton Borough Football Club can return to play at Liberty Way whilst meeting their lease requirements. The council could offer to act as an honest broker between the football club and Arden Tigress to aid ground lease negotiations. The council could remind the ground owners of their obligations as part of the asset of community value, so should they attempt to change the use of the land, that the council will view the ACV as a material consideration in any planning applications. We thank you for considering our concern and hope you're able to join in supporting the continued existence of such a valued part of the town's culture and heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Axon. Councillor Wilson, would you like to respond?
Football club has a long and proud history in our town, but unfortunately it also has a checkered history of late to go with it. Many of us have read in the papers and on social media about the financial woes that the club is also going through. Let me be clear from the outset that as a borough council we will not be bailing anyone out. We do not have the financial resources to do this, nor do we have the knowledge or capacity to run a club ourselves. This council has a poor track record of managing and financing leisure facilities, and we will not get involved in such high-risk ventures again. I met the supporters group with Councillor Markham a few weeks ago, and it is important to stress that they are completely separate from the management of the club itself. But they are rightly passionate about the football club they support and want to see it return to its former glory. This is ultimately a dispute between the club, its creditors, and the owners of the land. Therefore, we have no standing in this situation. What we do have an obligation to do is process the renewal of the asset of community value designation, and I can assure residents and council that this application will be processed according to the legal regulations. This will give some comfort to the local fans. I should also confirm that whilst I can never say never, under the borough plan, both as it stands and under the review, the land is not designated for any kind of development whatsoever. And as local residents will attest to, the land regularly floods from the River Anchor during heavy downpours. What we as a council, and I am sure the fans and local residents want to see, is the parties get together and put together a responsible and business-like rescue plan for the football claim that is sustainable for the long term, Mr. Mayor.
It's not appropriate, I don't believe. Yes. You'll need a seconder for that motion. We have a seconder. Do we need to do... In which case we have a seconder, we'll take that to a vote. Referring that to the scrutiny committee is what you're asking for. Councillor Troman.
Point of which scrutiny committee the council is asking it to go to, and which of the council's remits it would fall under. I'd love to consider all sorts of things, but they are outside the council's remit normally. So if we could be directed to that, and if officers could give their legal opinion on that, thank you.
Want to direct?
Mr. Mayor, would it be the business and planning one? And if that's not right, I'm sure the officers can correct it afterwards. But can we first take the vote, as per the Constitution, that it's referred to the appropriate scrutiny committee? The Constitution doesn't say at this point, we need to say which one. Thank you.
We believe that to be the correct OSP. In which case we'll take a vote on that the item be moved to the OSP for business regeneration and planning. Can we have a vote on that, please? Those in favour? Those against? Do we have any abstentions? 6. That motion is lost. Thank you. We have those finished. Item number 7 is questions by members. Now, we do have a number of questions on the sheet tonight, so I'd appreciate the portfolio holders being, let's say, quite curt with their responses, please, to keep it under a decent time scale. Thank you. First question on the agenda is from Councillor Condacourt. Thank you, Councillor.
Sadly, the busiest area in Warwickshire for fire and rescue services. The County Council is consulting on a new service model, which would mean the borough would lose one of its 3 fire engines. At Nuneaton, it means a reduction from 2 to 1 full-time crewed appliance. Bedworth would change from having one crewed to having a crewed appliance for 16 hours a day. It would then normally now have no crew between 10 p.m. and 6 p.m. in the morning. It would be very useful if our Borough Council produced a robust response to the consultation before the 10th of March deadline. Has the leader of the council taken a look at the proposed cuts and, like me, decide to oppose the loss of Nuneaton's second fire appliance? Thank you.
Wilson.
A response to his question from the Council on the 14th of July 2021.
Is it appropriate to the question asked in the first instance? Yes. Thank you. In which case?
So that the public now know, rather than having to look back 3 years. Thank you.
Reading.
Question number 2, we have a from Councillor Jekievic.
If you're looking tonight. So this Conservative administration has made it a priority to tackle the scourge of antisocial behaviour in our housing stock. Could the portfolio holder please update us on progress to date in dealing with the completely unacceptable behaviour? Thank you.
Councillor Golby.
To the question. I'll be quite happy to answer this because, as you know, ASB is something quite close to my heart. So the team in our council have recently been identified as one of the top performing councils nationwide for effectively addressing incidents of antisocial behaviour within our own housing stock. This acknowledgement comes off the back of a comprehensive freedom of information request that was sent out by a journalist who requested ASB and eviction data from councils with housing responsibilities up and down the country, so UK-wide. The FOI data was published and it shows not only is Nuneaton and Bedworth the 5th highest ranking council in the country to deal with ASB-related evictions in its housing stock, but it's also the 5th highest ranked in relation to the ratio of evictions of ASB tenants, again, in our own housing stock. So in 2022-23, we dealt with almost 500 complaints of antisocial behaviour. We undertook investigations on all of those complaints, and the upshot is that there were 70 warnings issued, along with 60 legal interventions that took place. These included warning notices served, possession orders, injunctions, partial closures or closure orders, community protection notices, and 7 full evictions just because of antisocial behaviour. The information that I've given highlights how successful we've been recently, not only in a local sense, but actually on a national level. And the FOI information actually pitches us against some much larger authorities who did a lot worse than we did. We've got Birmingham and Sandwell. The latter, Sandwell, actually received 7,500 complaints, but only took 1 eviction. So, you know, we are punching well above our weight on this. The legal process for eviction is long and laborious. We do know this, and sometimes it's very frustrating for residents to have to go through all the legal hoops, but we have to do it properly so we get a good result at the end. So it is a long process, but please stick with it for anybody that's going through that problem. And I'd just like to actually point out that the teams have been really, really good at adopting a more zero tolerance approach. When we came in, didn't make any secret of the fact that I take a much more zero tolerance stance against things like that in our housing than previous portfolio holders ever have. And I want to give credit to the team for doing everything that they can. They've taken to the new structures really with gusto, and they are doing a fantastic job. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Question 3 is from Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Restoring civic pride has been a priority mission of the current Conservative-led administration at this council. Could the Cabinet member responsible please provide an update on progress on this? Thank you.
And thank you to Councillor Brown for his question, and I applaud him for his one-man effort to revive the bow tie. Looking splendid this evening. This is a very broad-ranging question, and it's a question I can give a very wide-ranging answer to, because restoring civic pride in our borough has been at the heart of our mission from the day we first took office 2.5 years ago. We've put on a splendid programme of events to mark the Platinum Jubilee and the coronation, including a freedom parade. We've had 3 mayors who've restored dignity to the office. We've introduced deep cleans of our town centres. We've finally got our grounds maintenance programme in working order to keep parks and green spaces in better condition. We're cracking down on littering and fly tipping. We've helped beautify our town centres with a shopfront scheme and by removing certain unaesthetic water features. So, Mr Mayor, there is a great deal to be said for the Conservative record on this theme. But tonight, I'd like to call attention to one particular area, and that is how we've restored the role of our civic traditions and honours in the public life of our borough. Last year, we created the first alderman and alderwomen in the history of the borough of Nuneaton and Bedworth, and created the first freeman for many decades. This not only revived the traditions that provide colour and vitality to our civic life, but it finally gave recognition for decades of public service in some cases. Recognition that was long overdue, and for some could never come, such as the late Des O'Brien, Martin Heatley, or Bill Olner. But, Mr Mayor, we also know that honours do not belong to political leaders alone. They belong to the people, to those unsung heroes who work, help and volunteer in their communities and neighbourhoods every day, never asking for thanks, often without receiving any recognition at all. Now, we mean to change that, Mr Mayor. There is a great deal of merit in our people. That is why we have created the Borough Award of Merit, to honour those residents who serve those communities of which they're so proud to be a part and do their little bit to make life better for us all. Of course, councillors can nominate for that, but the best people who know where these awards should be awarded are the people in the communities themselves. So to that end, we'll be accepting public nominations and have opened an online form on the council's website. You need a proposer and a seconder from a different address, and valid nominations will be considered by the council's Civic Honours Committee next year. So tonight, I'd like to make an appeal to the public, if any members of the public are listening to this. If you know somebody who has helped your community and deserves to be recognised, then let us know. It's time that the champions in our communities got the recognition that they deserve. And I hope, Mr Mayor, on top of everything else we've done, that will contribute to civic pride in our borough. Thank you very much.
Appropriate. Thank you. Question number 4 from myself. The Planning Department has recently spent 2 days defending our decision to refuse planning permission for more houses on the woodlands in Bedworth. As the member for the Slough ward, which includes the woodlands, I am delighted that the result we won and the planning has been refused. Would the portfolio holder join me in thanking the department and the local residents for this success? Councillor Smith.
That question, Mr Mayor, and I'm delighted to join you in thanking not just the planning team for delivering a first-class defence in the recent 2-day Woodlands Lane Development Appeal hearing, but also the residents who spoke so passionately about the terrible effect this development would have had on their homes and the surrounding area had it been allowed to go ahead. I will also add thanks to yourself, Mr Mayor, and Councillor Evans for your valuable input at the hearing. This combined effort of the council working alongside residents and ward members delivered a fantastic result and sent a clear message to developers that we will defend passionately our right to refuse inappropriate development in our borough. When the Conservatives took control of the authority, we promised as part of the Borough Plan Review process that we would do our best to protect the woodlands area from development, and this success reinforces our commitment to do just that. In his decision summary, the Inspector pointed to Borough Council policies which mean the proposal is not as suitable given the risk of flooding and poor drainage. The inspector also commented on poor accessibility of the site, the negative effect on the character of the area, the effect on biodiversity, including protected species such as great-crested newts and bats, and he also upheld the 5-year housing land supply, which currently stands at 5.45 years. This was a great performance by all and a confidence boost for the planning team, in a time where we're facing an extraordinary amount of 20 appeals against our decisions to refuse a variety of planning applications. At the moment, the planning team are extremely busy preparing for the upcoming 3 appeal inquiries, which will take place in January and February and last 6 to 8 days each. It's vitally important we also win these appeals to stop developers building a total of 1,900 houses along the A5 corridor. We rightly refuse these because they aren't in our plan, they aren't policy compliant, they're fraught with problems and our residents simply don't want them. Finally, it goes without saying I'm extremely proud of my whole team in the planning department for the consistently high level of quality work they deliver whilst under extreme pressure. And the Woodlands Lane appeal decision is a testament to their hard work and dedication.
Question number 5 from Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the portfolio holder for the public services. The council recently announced that the successful tender to run the Bedworth Civic Hall was awarded to the Bedworth CIC, and congratulations to them. Can the leader please update us on what progress has been made since this announcement was made?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Markham.
Thanks for the question. The meetings have actually been held between the council and representatives of the CIC to move matters along, and the legal documentation is being progressed. As you will appreciate, there's a lot of information to be shared and clarification required, which the parties are working through together in a constructive manner.
Councillor Baxter Payne.
The councillor question. When we took control in May 22, this administration introduced a new offer on car parking in our towns at the bargain price of 3 hours for £1.50. Could the leader tell us what impact this offer has had on visits to our towns?
Ever since we took control in May 2021, we have sought to balance having a great competitive parking offer in the town, in the town centres, with the need to ensure that it is financially sustainable. Initially, we introduced a package of measures to help local businesses and traders through the COVID recovery. More recently, we have settled on the offer of 3 hours for £1.50, which in my view offers unbeatable value for money. And the figures speak for themselves, Mr. Mayor. Footfall this year in Nuneaton town centre is up by 22% compared to last year. The average time that visitors are spending in our towns is also up, meaning that they are spending more money with local businesses and market traders. Nuneaton is now 204 minutes on average, up 1 hour 9 minutes compared to the previous year. And Bedworth is now 211 minutes on average, up 1 hour 27 minutes. Given the challenging economic times we are in that is affecting everyone's pockets, I think that is a great improvement, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Green.
Yes, I have a question for the portfolio holder for public services. As yet another legacy of Labour's failure in Nuneaton, the Abbey Theatre has been without a lease from the Borough Council for over 12 years. This has limited their ability to apply for grants to improve the building. Could the portfolio holder tell us what progress is being made towards a new lease?
Question. I can confirm that the council officers have met on site this month with representatives of the theatre to review a condition report and discuss the opportunities for a lengthier lease agreement going forward.
Councillor Rob Tromans.
Colleagues and I have for many years fought hard to protect our residents from unauthorised traveller encampments in our borough. I understand our injunction protecting our local area has recently come before the Supreme Court, and I would ask the Cabinet member to tell us what the outcome of that was.
Thanks for the question. Yep, I'd be pleased to announce what's been going on. So you're right. I mean, who can forget the summer, that fateful summer not that long ago when we had the cat and mouse encampments, so much so that residents put up "Welcome to Butlins" signs on some of the main roads. Thankfully, those days are behind us, but not before the cost to the taxpayer of those incidents was around £111,000, racked up between 2013 and 2019 for clean-up costs, eviction, court action, officer time, and then not to mention the monumental levels of disruption that we actually faced within the borough with all this going on. So, back to your question, not many people will be aware, but since the Conservative leadership took over in 2021, we have faced several legal challenges to the traveller injunction which was put in place. We have been quietly but robustly fighting a nationally significant battle to defend the borough, again, from unauthorised encampments. After going all the way to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, at the end of November 2023, this court case was finally resolved and the judgment came in our favour. It was always my position that we should take whatever action we needed to defend the borough from these illegal or unauthorised encampments. In fact, my words to the former director Richardson was, throw the kitchen sink at it. I wasn't willing to walk away. We needed to defend our position. If you compare that to the attitude of past Labour cabinet members who were responsible for dealing with illegal traveller encampments, who referred to concerned residents as brain dead, self-opinionated and morons when they raised issues and concerns about encampments. Calling residents brain dead in an email to councillors and senior officials, and doubling down on Facebook, calling people morons and brain dead on a thread where residents were complaining about the encampments at the time, was actually ridiculous for somebody who was supposed to be in office and defending this borough from those encampments. And no one should ever actually forget that at all. So we believe, particularly myself, that the Supreme Court judgment supports the view of this Conservative group that travellers or anybody else, because let's not forget we are constantly hearing about equality all over the place. If my residents can't do it, nobody else should be able to do it. That's equality as far as I'm concerned. But if we take the traveller injunction is in place, and nobody should feel that they have the right to pitch up on any land they choose to without the appropriate authorisation. And as it stands, after all the legal wrangling, our interim injunction remains intact. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wright, the question.
Looking at the latest infrastructure funding statement, we can see that £300,000 has been allocated but not yet spent on affordable housing, and nearly £500,000 on biodiversity. Could the responsible Cabinet member clarify when and how these monies will be spent?
Councillor Wright, for your question. This is in fact two questions for two different portfolio holders, neither of which is planning. Unfortunately, another demonstration of how little Green Party members sometimes understand about the workings of this council and which department actually does what. For clarity, the planning department is responsible for approving planning applications, and as part of this work it conditions Section 106 agreements as part of the approval process. From this point on, the Planning Department is responsible for the monitoring of the 106 agreements, and as part of that, we report activity annually in the infrastructure funding statement referred to in the question. And that is the limit of planning's involvement. We don't actually spend the money. However, in order to provide some answers to the question, I've reached out to the respective portfolios and can answer on their behalf as follows. With regard to Section 106 monies for affordable housing, this sits with the housing portfolio, and there is a plan to use this to acquire stock for the housing revenue account. The delays in spending it thus far have been in part due to restrictions on where we can spend the money locality-wise within the borough and the ability to match fund this money to better source properties. The Housing Department are proactively looking to commit or spend this money during the new financial year 24 to 25, if not by the end of this financial year. With regard to biodiversity, this sits with the Parks and Green Spaces portfolio, and the Section 106 monies will be spent in accordance with the individual commitments made in each relevant Section 106 agreement, in terms of stated biodiversity units, locations and habitat types. The habitat creation works are most likely to be undertaken by contractors appointed and directed by the Parks and Green Space team, although partner organisations could potentially be involved in some delivery, as long as that sits within the basis set out within the 106 agreements that funding is received from. The delivery of the habitats will be undertaken in accordance with timescales set out in the individual 106 agreements. A first round of habitat creation using biodiversity offset sums to create habitat on sites began last year and is anticipated to now continue each year for a number of years until all sums are utilised.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Question for the portfolio holder for finance and corporate. As part of our financial planning, could the finance portfolio holder please tell us how he is future-proofing the maintenance and upkeep of our leisure, play and open spaces, please? Thank you.
Mayor, Councillor Hartshorn has hit upon a crucial issue when it comes to providing a good service to the residents of this borough. Lack of serious forward planning was one of the most frustrating and baffling things that we discovered upon taking office 2.5 years ago. Specifically in this case, it has not been the practice at Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, when beginning projects, to plan for the upkeep of assets or to create sinking funds. That is, special funds set aside to pay for any ongoing costs or to pay off any debt incurred. The result has been that when we have had to make serious repairs to assets, we have not been able to do so. See, for example, the demands of the Civic Hall on the General Fund or the General Fund Capital Programme to pay for repairs which, in the long run, as we have seen, have become unaffordable. So under the new Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which is being so excellently developed by Councillor Guttridge and his team, proper surveys are now going to be undertaken of our parks and playgrounds so that we can access data on their conditions and we can monitor them and flag when repairs and upgrades are needed. As part of our budget this year, in the February just gone, we took the one-off investment in playgrounds from 2022 and continued it, creating a permanent capital programme of £75,000 a year for play areas, maintenance, development and refurbishment of them. In other words, we are investing £75,000 in our playgrounds every year from now on. On a larger scale, one of our key projects is the Bedworth Leisure Centre, or Physical Activity Hub as it's known in the papers, which we are going to have to replace because, on the same reason, it is slowly ageing beyond any capacity to repair. As part of our financial modelling for this project, we have put aside an annual amount within the overall business model for a sinking fund for equipment renewal, which will support the ongoing maintenance where it's the council's responsibility. We're also amending our internal governance procedures to make sure that no project can proceed in future without funds being established and identified for their repair and upkeep. That is sound financial management, Mr. Mayor. That is prudent forward planning for the future. Compare that, Mr. Mayor, to the situation that we inherited, to the record of the Labour Party in office in their decades in office. The truth is that they let this borough rot. They let the parks and playgrounds rot. They let the finances of the borough rot. They let the planning system and the borough plan rot. And they let the housing repairs system rot. They did that because it was always easier to salami slice and then blame the government rather than doing the hard yards of reform and management improvement. It is always left to the Conservative Party to do the hard work and to fix the deep-set problems that set in when the party opposite fell asleep at the wheel, whether that's improving Cleaver Gardens or the borough plan. We've done it across the board, and it fell to this administration to come in and get the reforms done. And I've said it often, Mr. Mayor, but a generation of neglect cannot quickly be put right. But I can tell you this, that in May of 2024, the Borough of Nuneaton and Bedworth will be in a much better position to face the future than it was in May of 2021.
Move on to item 8, matters of urgency. We have no matters of urgency. Move on to item 9, which is Cabinet Report, which is within your addendum, commencing on page 31. Who moves the motion? Councillor Wilson.
Noting, and of course members of the Cabinet will be happy to try and answer any questions that arise, but I'd just like to draw attention to members on some points on the papers. So we've had to deal with the impact of the boundary review for the council, which of course was the subject of the extraordinary council in November, but the Cabinet had to deal with that. There are several finance reports on here which show that the scale of the challenge is significant, but we are taking robust action to ensure, as Councillor Croft is always highlighting, that the finances of this council are put on a secure and sound footing. And also, unusually so, but there were a number of items at the combined authority of interest to the council over the past couple of months. So I previously highlighted the funding for energy efficiency programme within the West Midlands, which our residents will be able to apply to, and Warwickshire County Council is taking the lead on behalf of the non-cons in our county. But also the fact that we have been acting as part of the Combined Authority Homelessness Task Force. We have officer representation on there, and we were able actually to put forward some of our own experiences about homelessness to feed into a wider regional report, which can also be used to try and lobby government about the impacts of homelessness across the board, which is a constant source of financial pressure to us, but also of deep significance to those who are actually affected by homelessness, and also the impacts of the reallocation of HS2 funds, which was announced at the Conservative Party conference by the Prime Minister. Actually, Mr Mayor, the West Midlands does receive some significant boosts, and Nuneaton and Bedworth in particular will receive investment directly or indirectly, most notably on the A5 corridor, which is a constant source of consternation to residents on that side of the borough. Due in large part to the accelerated development over there, which we inherited from the previous administration. But actually, there are plans now afoot to upgrade the A5 between Tamworth and Rugby, which will have a significant impact on us here in Nuneaton and Bedworth, because we all know, Mr Mayor, that when the M6 goes down, everyone comes through us onto the A5. But we will try and answer any questions that members may feel they wish to put.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Indeed. Do we have any questions from members? Councillor Condacor.
Thanks. Can I start on page 33, where we had the Councillor Croft and the General Fund budget update? I'm a bit confused, and maybe Councillor Croft can walk me through this, in that we keep having trouble with car parking revenue, and yet the leader has now told us that car parking revenue is, visit numbers are up 22%. Can you explain why your car parking income is struggling when everything is apparently so rosy? Or is it down to the fact that actually we're getting people staying longer when we've lost a lot of visitors? I mean, it might just be all the people going to kegs and all these students with multiple phones clocking up on the geocaching. But I'd like some clarity, because I'm not getting consistency between the everything's going marvellous, we've got 22% more visitors, and the appalling loss of car parking revenue.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Condacor does need to understand that there have been huge economic turmoil in this country over the past 2 or 3 years. And the whole point of the car parking policy is to keep visitor numbers up. Now, what would have happened without that policy? If we'd had a completely unaffordable, in terms of our visitor numbers, we'd have killed off the town centre dead. Every time the previous administration put up car parking fees, because it was an easy win for them, it was another way to sort of plug what they thought was a gap in the budget, they put the screws on the town centre. They put the flamethrower on our town centre. So, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Condacor is sort of cooing over in the corner about, oh well, we think that the visitor numbers aren't, the receipts aren't matching the visitor numbers. Quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, if we hadn't taken that decision, we would have killed off the town centre for good. And who knows, Mr. Mayor, maybe they're all cycling.
Councillor Condacor.
cycled in this morning and there was 2 other cyclists cycling alongside me, so there was at least 3 people cycling in through the traffic. My next question is about the regeneration and land at Vicarage Street, which is on bottom of page 32. This item is on pink paper. I won't describe what's on the item, but can I ask the leader of the council why more of this hasn't been put in the public domain, and when will we be able to tell people about this rotten deal about the land at Vicarage Street?
The planning application, which is the main subject really behind what is going on in Vicarage Street, is in the public domain, and no doubt Councillor Condricourt has submitted endless reams of paper or online emails in response to it, as he usually does, with very little outcome for it. But residents can see what the plan is for Vicarage Street. Now, what the report was dealing with is how it is best to try and deliver that once we establish it is financially viable. And that planning consent is granted. So the report actually is a way of bringing forwards a site which has been derelict for the best part of probably close to 20 years now, with the old job centre being knocked down, then the old magistrates building, the police building, and all of the other bits and pieces. What we really want to do is regenerate that part of town, if it is possible, so that we have a main arterial route into Nuneaton, which is actually inviting to residents rather than showing some of the worst aspects of our town to people. How on earth are we going to get inward investment to our town if it isn't attractive for investors to come into? Now, what annoys me, Mr Mayor, is that we always have the member opposite talking down our town centres, whereas what we need to do is talk up our town centres and try and act to bring them back. And he keeps talking about the perilous state of the finances and how this authority needs an intervention from the government. I have news for Councillor Condricourt and the residents of this borough. It isn't this council which needs an intervention, it is Councillor Condricourt.
We're told about empty garages, and the budget monitoring for the HRA is on page 32. Can Councillor Golby tell us how she's going to progress getting the empty garages into use? Because I believe we've got 640 empty, and as she's been in charge for almost 3 years, why we haven't got more of the empties in use rather than just hiking the charges? Thank you.
Respond.
The full financials of that, I did actually read it out at the overview and scrutiny, and it is in the public domain, so feel free to go and have a look at that. But what I can tell you is, and I have said it about 500 times now, is I am reviewing everything that we've got. So I need to know what we've got, I need to know where we've got it, I need to know a full condition report, because then I can decide what to do. I have said several times again, measure twice, cut once. And that is what I'm doing. And you can ask me and ask me and ask me, but you will not get a different answer to that. Until I'm ready to do what I need to do on behalf of this council, because I'm in the chair, it's my decision, it's where the buck stops with me, I am not going to make any decisions. I want the base data right, and then I can make the forward decisions. You know, it's there's an acronym, SISO. I won't tell you what it is, but you can work it out. And until that's done, I'm not going to commit to anything. And you know this, because you keep asking the same question, and I keep having to say the same answer. So even though you decry doing things in a more commercial manner, and you decry putting the rents up, actually, what I did say at that Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee was we still have around 300 people on a waiting list for our garages, with the new costs. The majority of those people are actually going to be paying the higher rate should they be offered a garage. So again, much more income to the council, and if we look at it over a 52-week period, we're actually looking at around £70,000 on current occupancy rates, additional to the council to what was being brought in before. So you can pull your face as much as you want, but actually it's a sensible way forward. And just on the length of time that, again, I keep having to refer to, the fact is I'm having to clean up a mess that was left by the previous occupants of this cabinet. Because every corner I turn, I'm going round, I'm lifting up the carpet where they've been sweeping all the stuff for years, and it's like, oh my God, I can't put the carpet back down, I have to do something about it, which is what we're all pretty much finding ourselves in a position of doing. So the length of time it's taken is the right thing to do because of the amount of hurdles I've had to jump through. One of those things is we didn't even have policies in place where we should have policies. You know, it's little things like that that protect this council. And going forwards, I'm going to make sure that if I leave this office, it will be left fit for the future. So I will take as long as is necessary to do things right. I'm not off for quick fixes. And if you ask me again next week, you will get exactly the same answer.
Councillor Condicord, different question?
300 odd people who are waiting for a garage, that there are 640 empty, but you're measuring them twice before letting them being rented. Thank you.
That you fail to understand. We are doing a stock condition review. We have stock. We need to know what condition it's in, whether it's lettable, whether we need to do any work to it to make it lettable, or whether we just need to flatten it and start again. That is the point that I'm at. How many times do I need to explain this? Is that clear, Mr. Mayor?
Do I hear any other questions regarding the Cabinet report? Would you like to speak as the seconder or not? Councillor Wilson? We'll take that as read. Thank you. Item number 10. Nominations for charity trustees of the Abbey Theatre. I can pass it over to Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
To move the recommendations as printed at 10A and 10B, that Councillor Green and Councillor Markham, as the relevant portfolio holder, be appointed as trustees to the Abbey Theatre for a 3-year term. This has come about because as part of the Abbey Theatre invited me to go down and see the great works that they are doing, and also to follow up on how the state of the theatre is. And that was at the point where they informed me as leader that they had not had a new lease for over 12 years, that it was impacting on their ability to actually go out and seek funds. So I brought that back to Councillor Markham, and that is why we are now trying to yet again right another wrong about not having a lease to go out there and be able to get some funds. But they also highlighted at the same time that there is provision within their constitution for 2 appointees from the council to their board of trustees, so that the council can have a conduit in and listen to what's going on, and also represent the council to the Abbey Theatre at the same time. And I think that is eminently sensible, given they are in our premises, and that they do actually provide a great service to the borough. In fact, if ever you go and speak to one of the reps, Mr. Mayor, they will show you a schedule of their programmes for the next 18 months. And you try and find a day which is free in there, Mr. Mayor, it's very difficult to try and find. But they are part of the fabric of our town. They do a lot for us at very little cost to us. And so I think it's appropriate that we take them up on their offer and put forward some nominees. And Councillor Green and Councillor Markham have kindly consented to represent us, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Right to speak should it be necessary.
Thank you. Wish to speak on that matter? Councillor Condicord.
First or whatever. But I'd really like to say how important the Abbey Theatre is. With the loss of the Civic Hall, it is so busily booked up now. It is such an important venue, and it's obviously going to take some time before we get the Civic Hall working again, if that does work. But we should be doing this a cross-party thing. If we've got 2 nominees to be trustees, it really should be from the opposite side of the chamber, because at some point, control of this council may change. People may miraculously decide to elect someone else to run the council, and then you've lost your conduit. If both the elected members to the trustees are from your party, I don't think that is very helpful then in the future. And also, I go to the Abbey Theatre an awful lot. I go to their comedy. They've got a little outside area. Last week we went to the Rabble Youth Theatre. I think Mr. Mayor was there. And it is such a wonderful thing with such a diverse set of events. I think it wants cross-party support. I'd be happy to be a trustee, and I'm sure one of the Labour group might be. But I think it's really important that we do have opposition members as trustees and people, trustees, who use it really, really regularly. I know you, Mr Mayor, have been there at least twice. I've seen you, and I assume that we haven't always clashed on dates. So, yeah, I think you'd be a great trustee because you've visited so often. I think I would be, and therefore I would propose an amendment that myself and the Mayor would actually be the two nominees, because I think it should be people who go to the theatre regularly who become trustees, not someone who's there just to protect the Conservative Party interest. Thank you.
Councillor Watkins, you should speak.
Because I'd like to add an amendment. I'd like to add an amendment of Councillor Jill Shepherd and Councillor Neil Phillips. Nobody's got any question about how valuable the Abbey Theatre is to this town, and well, to the borough actually, and further afield. But the Abbey Theatre is actually within both of the councillors' wards, so I'd like to make a further amendment that Councillor Phillips and Councillor Jill Shepherd be put forward. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Condacall, we need a seconder for your amendment. Thank you, Councillor Wright. So we have a seconder on that. We'll go to a vote. Do we debate? Oh, sorry, apologies. We'll debate on the motion, the amendment from Councillor Condacall. Councillor Clark.
The amendments or the whole. I'm just some clarification on what I'm speaking on. On the amendment, the first amendment. Sorry, Mr Mayor, I should have stood up. I think, to be honest with you, it just demonstrates the fact that this Conservative administration is proactive in dealing with these issues, and it's sad to see that Johnny come lately, maybe, is now trying to get into the stream. Unfortunately, we've got people who have been on the talks, discussions, who can actually facilitate the delivery of the new lease, which is what we need, which is what the Abbey Theatre need. And I think it's inappropriate to put others on who haven't got that ability at this time, Mr Mayor.
Speak.
Thank you to put Councillor Condacall and your good self on there. And whilst I have no issue with your good self, Mr Mayor, this is about the fact that it falls under the remit, under the original proposal of the portfolio holder for public services, which covers leisure. That is Councillor Markham. She is the one who can affect the policy and feed directly in and out of that. Councillor Condacall couldn't organise a knees up in a brewery, never mind organise a department. Issue is, Mr Mayor...
Less personal comments, please.
I can, over the past couple of weeks, doesn't mean that I'm qualified to go and run it. At the end of the day, this is about who the people at the ballot box have put in control of this authority, and that is the Conservative Party. And as Councillor Condacall quite rightly highlights, that could change, but it isn't changing as of this moment. If we want to effect change, the person who actually has responsibility for that portfolio holder should be involved in those discussions. And Councillor Green has taken an active interest. They've approached Councillor Green, and there had been no dialogue, as far as I'm aware, prior to the Conservative administration taking control with the previous administration. So I will stand by the original motion and not take the amendment forward, Mr Mayor, because I think the two nominees we have are actually first-rate nominees in the first place.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Abbey Theatre approached me. It's not come from my Conservative colleagues, this. It's because my work with the theatre. And I've been round the theatre very much. I was there supporting the Abbey Theatre at the volunteer fair at St Thomas More, and that is why they asked me to be a trustee, because they said they wanted somebody who was new and actually would work for the theatre. Thank you.
probably know, prior to being a councillor, I served a number of years as a trustee of the Abbey Theatre. And I met you on many occasions there when you were organising the gang show and other events, and backstage working there and backstage at the Civic Hall, as you recall. I know that you would make an excellent trustee should that be necessary, and were you not also mayor at the current time. But a good show, Bandwagon, and I think we've just seen one coming along here tonight, and people trying to jump on it. We've got Councillor Green there, who's been approached by the theatre. We've got Councillor Markham, who's the portfolio holder, who can actually influence policy here at the council for things that matter to the theatre itself. It's a fantastic theatre. I mean, it was solidly booked before COVID, even while the Civic Hall was open, and had virtually no shows on. It just goes to show what a vibrant, volunteer-run theatre can be, as opposed to something that was managed by the then council into the ground. And in fact, the Abbey Theatre could be a wonderful inspiration to the people taking over the Civic Hall. So I think that the people we now put forward as nominees to be trustees are the right people in this instance. And I'll be certainly voting against the amendment. And to be perfectly honest, save myself the trouble of speaking on the Labour amendment as well, because the same things apply. Thank you.
Thank you.
To follow on from everything that's been said, actually this isn't just the Conservatives hoovering up positions, it will become a part of the annual council appointment of memberships to outside bodies. So we've said it many times before, if you want to get in on these things, get more people elected, sit on this side, get enough people to vote you into those positions. That is what we're doing going forward. This is an interim appointment because you've been asked to be one of the trustees, and it makes sense for the portfolio holder to be, at least on an interim basis, another one of the trustees. And I will, again, there's no point in speaking on the Labour amendment because the same thing stands for the Green amendment as it does for any other amendment coming forward on this matter tonight. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, and this is nothing personal of who's going to stand for what party or anything. The Abbey Theatre, it's a community interest company, so it's registered charity. So do we not want people on there that actually aren't there for any kind of political bias, or to be saying, you know, I'm here for the Conservatives or the Labour or the Green? Because I know that when looking for funding, certainly funders don't like it if it's heading towards one particular party or if it's in any way political. So rather than this becoming a political debate of who's the portfolio, who's this, isn't it actually who is going to represent personally that organisation? I could be completely, but I'm thinking this necessarily doesn't need to be a political thing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Baxter-Payne.
Here, Councillor Green was approached to be a trustee of the Abbey Theatre. Councillor Markham, as a portfolio holder, can work with them to get things done. At the end of the year, if we're not in control, the opposition can appoint 2 more trustees. But at the moment, it's not political. They've approached him. So what better way than somebody they actually want to work with and a portfolio holder that can make a change?
Thank you. Councillor Beetham, sorry.
Council appointment, not a political party appointment. So they'll be representing the council which the electorate voted for, so that would bypass any of the political motivations. Thank you.
Does it wish to speak on that motion? No, in which case we shall take a vote. Those in favour of the motion presented by Councillor Condacor? Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Okay, that motion is lost. If we move forward then to the motion presented by the Labour Party, do we need any discussions on that? Sorry, wish to speak? Second, sorry, correct, my mistake, need a seconder. Councillor Shires.
I second.
Question, Councillor Wilson? Sorry, Watkins?
It's like I've already said, Mr Mayor, I've put forward Councillor Jill Shepherd and Councillor Neil Phillips. It is in their ward. They have worked with the Abbey Theatre for a number of years in the past. They have got a good relationship with them, as have I, because I've worked with a number of people at the Abbey Theatre. That's all I have to say on it, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Clark? Yes, indeed. Yes, on the amendment raised by the Labour Party.
Yeah, thank you. Arise, they had 40 odd years to work with the Abbey Theatre and the group as it's been run over the years. They haven't done anything. As we identified, 12 years they've been waiting for a lease to be put in place. So I'm sorry, but I can't support this either, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Brown?
And I said I wasn't going to speak on this one. However, as much as I respect Councillor Phillips and Councillor Shepherd as nominees, during my entire time as trustee, they were never once seen negotiating or involving themselves with the trustees. So again, it's Johnny come lately when we've actually flagged this up as something we want to be involved with. And as we just to clarify the point Councillor Shire's made about this being a political appointment, they say it's not, it's a council one, and the other trustees are appointed by the theatre from people that they want to be as trustees from all walks of life. I was approached just because I had involvement as a school governor. Others were there because of their links with various theatre groups. So the trustees are not just the council appointed ones. They have a body of trustees that includes people from all walks of life. So these two appointments are simply council additions to that. I just thought better clarify, really. Thank you.
The core.
Shouldn't be heavily political on one side. And obviously things change over time, which is why my proposal was for two people from different parties, and while I've got some slight reservations about the Labour suggestion being two people from Labour, I'd far rather it be someone from this side of the chamber, someone from that side of the chamber. And also it's important that when people are trustees, they take part and are very active, and obviously time commitment, etc. I think it's easier to share out these appointments. And I think it's a bit rich from the biodiversity champion who's not done anything as far as I can see on biodiversity for the last 3 years.
It is not the subject matter we're discussing.
The thing is, when people take an active role, not just it's a name on their thing. So I'm going to abstain on the Labour suggestion because it's two people from the same party, which isn't solving the problem of two people from the same party. Thank you.
Councillor Croft.
Opposition have made the point repeatedly this evening that this appointment should not be a party political appointment. It should be an appointment based on competence and involvement with the community. And I hasten to add that the Councillor Green, the Green I do approve of, has been approached by the venue themselves, and I have to say is a pillar in terms of community volunteering. He's one of the most community-minded councillors we've got. He will do an excellent job, and I feel that we should get on and appoint him.
One from me, really. Rich of the opposition to nominate someone who basically they can't even get to a full council meeting, let alone a trustee meeting. Okay, so I won't be saying yes to this amendment.
Councillor Golby.
I may as well bat it right back at you. This is not a party political appointment in any way, but it's ironic that then the Labour group stand up and put forward two Labour members. So this is not a party political appointment. This is a party political appointment by the Labour Party, which seems to be okay. Again, reiterate the point, this is an appointment by the council, not by political lines.
Member wish to speak? Councillor Watkins? Councillor Shires? In which case we'll go to a vote. Those in favour of the motion by the Labour Party? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. That's failed. Thank you very much. We'll go back to the original motion, which is that we, Councillor Markham as portfolio holder, and Councillor Green take up the posts of trustees on the board of the Abbey Theatre. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. And do we have any abstentions? Thank you. In which case that is carried. That motion is carried. We move forward to item 12 on the agenda. Oh, sorry, we're on 11B, sorry, my mistake. 11A, oh, we've jumped the gun. Where are we? Back a page, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. Borough Plan Review, apologies. Can I pass that over to the portfolio holder, Richard Smith? Thank you.
This report is to update members on the Borough Plan Review process, in particular to review the responses to the Regulation 19 public consultation so the Council can approve the review process and it can continue on to the Regulation 22 submission. This is with the caveat that any further last-minute amendments deemed necessary up to submission can be carried out by delegated powers of the Assistant Director in consultation with me as the portfolio holder. The agenda also refers to the local development scheme updates required for the projected submission, which will also need approval from Council to be adopted. Lastly, there are some minor amendments that are required to the infrastructure delivery schedule as part of the Borough Plan Review. Mr Mayor, over the last 2.5 years, the Borough Plan has gone through various consultations, from the call for sites and issues and options both in 2021, the preferred options in 2022, and last of all the publication document which was consulted upon in September and October of this year. We're now closing in on the submission phase of the revised Borough Plan to the Inspectorate for consideration, and members will have seen the responses to our final publication document consultation, which have been distributed digitally as Appendix A, because it was a huge document and we didn't want to waste a lot of paper on it. I'm extremely proud of the hard work the planning team have invested to get the plan to this stage in just 2.5 years, and I would like to publicly thank the team for that amazing achievement. Whatever opposition members may claim, I can tell you this has been an ambitious and extremely quick delivery of a sound plan when compared to the 10 years the previous administration took. And it's a plan that delivers the housing we need in the places we need them, whilst reducing the building requirement from just under 1,000 homes a year at the moment to just 545 homes a year. The plan also delivers 80 hectares of employment land to ensure we produce the wealth-creating jobs that are so important for the local economy and our residents. Mr Mayor, this is our plan for our borough, but we still do have a duty to cooperate, so I can tell members that talks with our local authority neighbours are ongoing and progressing well. There have been complexities to overcome as we're leading the review process, and none of our neighbours are in the advanced plan-making stage that we are. However, we're now close to producing a memorandum of understanding. To accompany this MOU, we'll be submitting statements of common ground which are currently being prepared with statutory consultees, developers and other interested parties. The plan includes a comprehensive infrastructure delivery schedule to satisfy the increased need for infrastructure to support the plan. However, I must emphasise, whilst we can identify and outline the infrastructure need as part of the plan making process, contrary to what our Green Party members would have the public believe the physical delivery of most of the infrastructure is not in the power of this authority, but down to the statutory bodies responsible. So if the Greens have a problem with sewers and water supply, speak to Severn Trent. If you want more cycle lanes, speak to County Highways. For health provision, go to the NHS, but don't mislead the residents of this borough that shortfalls in these areas are either the fault of this authority or the plan-making process. Finally, Mr Mayor, Council will note there's a slight update to the local delivery scheme timetable due to a minor slippage caused by extremely heavy pressure the planning department is under at the moment. We're currently faced with a mixture of staff shortages, heavy workload and final preparation work of the Borough Plan Review, as well as investing a lot of time into preparation work needed for the upcoming 3 appeal inquiries that I spoke about earlier on this evening. All of this means instead of December submission, we're now looking at January, so a slight slippage there. So, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to propose the recommendation as printed so we can move the plan to its final stage. And due to the very tight timescales involved, this report is marked not for calling as per the overview and scrutiny rules in paragraph 15F, part 4 of the Constitution. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you.
I thank you. Questions that have not been raised at the previous Borough Plan meeting.
Talking about things that have been talked about at scrutiny means because obviously less people were there. This is a council meeting and anything should be a legitimate item for debate if it's relevant to the subject. The local plan started to be developed each time after the last one's adopted. So this plan was started to be designed by our officers from the 2019 onwards. So there was 2 years when nothing public happened, but when you took office, you did get a flying start with your consultation. What has been happening since is you've tried to move quickly in public, but actually things have gone slow like all plans do. We have lots of issues with this plan, one of which is it doesn't actually reduce the numbers. Until we get to 2024, we don't know how many of the previous plans houses are built. We know how many houses are in your plan, which is 15 years, but until we know how many have already been built, we then don't know what the sum of the 2 plans is effectively. So to say it's more houses or less houses, we cannot tell until we actually know how many houses have been built up to 2024, but it's looking like your plan will deliver more houses than Labour's, but take 8 years more to do so. So the rate of building is slower, but we're going to lose all this countryside that required that was in Labour's plan. There's fundamentally an issue of infrastructure, and my residents in Wellington, even the ones who aren't green, don't want sewage surcharges on the Wellington Road. We have issues with doctors' surgeries and all the other things. And yes, I do talk to all these people. But what we need is the developers to talk to these people as well. And that is why a strong and robust plan process, where actually you can't move into a house until the sewer's built properly, that doesn't stop the house being built, but it means the developer has got some stake in actually trying to chivvy on the Severn Trent to provide decent sewers. We have an infrastructure plan in here that is a work of fiction. We have things in here such as the upgrade to the Church Lane sewers, which is in the big table. That's not going to be delivered by Severn Trent now. That is needed for the houses that have been built on the Wenton Road, the 1,000 that were built, and the hundreds more to be built on Top Farm. We're not getting the railway improvements. We're not getting the stuff that we're supposed to get to mitigate all this extra housing. This is a third-rate plan now. Because we've actually built so many... Because we've actually built and approved so many houses now, we've now approved all the houses in Bulkington you were going to stop. Yeah, we are no longer at a 2-2. We're now back at a third-rate plan. We've got all the housing, none of the infrastructure, and the fundamental basis of these plans, the growth of Coventry and Warwickshire, is starting to be unpicked. Today we heard on the radio, the University of Coventry is going to make £100 million of cuts over the next 2 years because they're not getting the students in. A lot of that will be the foreign students and their dependents. Yeah, we don't get perpetual growth. Things go wrong, and the anti-migration policies now, in terms of foreign students and their dependents, will have an effect on Coventry's population. We need to look at what's going on and have a plan that's based upon the realities of post-Brit exit, modern conservative trashed Britain.
Clark.
Wasn't going to speak again. I'm not going to try and bamboozle the public or this authority with statistics that other people may identify. I'm going to stick to what we know has happened, as what is happening, insofar as it took 15 years to develop the last plan, and we're now having to suffer the consequences of that plan as it came forward. And that house building has put a demand on our area, particularly on my area in the northeast of Nuneaton. I'm very cautious on my comments because I welcome the reduction in the housing numbers that has been identified in the new plan, because I think it's essential that we build what is required for our residents in Nuneaton and Bedworth and Bulkington. We need to concentrate on what we need in our borough. I hear what's being said about the infrastructure. That comes along with the consultations. As part of the consultations, we've done our work within 2.5 years. We're ready to go to the inspector. It took a lot longer than that last time, and they didn't get any of the infrastructure in at all. Hopefully, as ours progresses, that infrastructure and those other plans will come on board, and we'll have a good plan once it's all signed off by the planning inspector, hopefully in the very near future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cal.
You are speaking to outside organisations, but I'm sure the response is, who are you? Anyway, I've been doing a lot in my area because that is why I'm elected. And when we talk about getting infrastructure in place, we talk about dealing with organisations that are external to this council, and they can frustrate things an awful lot. The NHS is one of them, unfortunately. It takes so long to get anything done through the NHS. When we're talking about new infrastructure being put in place, new doctors' surgeries, I have a situation that is currently very live in my area, where years and years ago there was planning permission given, or there was as part of a redevelopment in Bermuda, where part of that was a medical facility. So I'm in a position where there is the option to build an extra care facility, which is what we desperately need because we've got an ageing population and we have a desperate need for elderly extra care. I have the option of associating that with a GP surgery. There's a developer on the hook, ready to do it. There's a extra care provider, wants to do it. Got GPs ready to move in. The NHS have blocked it. They blocked it. They're saying no to any more GP surgeries. That's not us, that's the NHS, because they are currently doing a review of services and they won't move on it. So when you do your Little Ray of Sunshine Act, you have to be aware, and residents have to be aware, that we are working really, really, really hard to get infrastructure in place for our residents, because we are all residents ourselves. We are all subject to the delays that everybody else feels. We are all subject to the frustrations of not being able to get a doctor's appointment, and we take that forward. I certainly, in my prior role as Chair of Adult Social Care and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, got myself into a bit of hot water with the GPs when I asked them to step up their game. So much so that they wrote a lot of letters trying to get me removed from my position. But I stand firm, and I was proved right in the end. I'm vindicated, usually am. But, you know, it's not us that are responsible for delivering those things. And what's going on in my patch at the moment is a very, very good example about how we can provide the environment to make these things work, and we still get blocked by outside bodies such as the NHS. I mean, the fact that the NHS are blocking a GP surgery is absolutely ludicrous, and I will be taking it further up the chain, because I think it's only right. You know, there's a lot of people put a lot of effort into this plan, and I think just to listen to the negativity that constantly oozes out of that area from the Greens, if anybody thinks the Greens could have come up with anything better, then they're deluded. They are absolutely deluded on this. Thank you.
Offer my congratulations to Councillor Smith and to the planning team for the work they've done. For me, it's slightly bittersweet in terms of review, because as Councillor Conticord's already mentioned, Bulkington, which is my ward, there's nothing that could really be done to save the houses there, and that's something that I will always regret that I've not been able to do. However, we can't look at individual sites. We have to look holistically at what's going on. And I think this is something that Councillor Condicord has failed to kind of grasp throughout. He's kind of going through and he's cherry-picking the little bits that he wants to of this plan, and he's pointing out the little things that he doesn't like about it. And there's always going to be things that, you know, we're not happy with. But if we look at it, you know, as a document, and it is a weighty tome, those of us who have seen it and tried to read it, I mean, you know, it takes some lifting, never mind how many hours it takes to read the thing. But, you know, overall, it's a very, very good and well-constructed plan, and there's a lot more positive in there than there is negative. And again, Councillor Conticord, we've got to remember, we've got to stop talking down this borough. You know, it's something you know, other speakers have mentioned tonight, and it's this negativity. You are the one who wanted to actually slash the budget on planning and reduce the amount of money in your uncosted, I mean, you know, to call it sort of like a treasury report, I don't know, is really probably a bit too grand, but you wanted to slash funding to that process, so that it would have taken even longer. You know, you're saying that we're going to deliver more houses than Labour over an 8-year period, but let's not forget, though, Labour's delays in actually getting anything done allowed 4,000 extra houses to be built in the borough to be accepted. We're now in a position where we're in the driving seat for once. Okay, we're ahead of all our neighbouring sort of boroughs, and we're actually now the ones who are going out, and we're now directing the conversation because they're playing catch up with us, and that's going to be to our benefit as a borough council. That's going to bring some very, very real benefits to us. So yes, it's not as perfect as any of us would like, but what we have is an incredible document, okay, nonetheless. And I'm going to be very happy to support that, and will continue to support that over however long I'm a councillor for, okay? And the fact is, what we've done is we've future-proofed what's going on in this borough, which is something the previous administration failed to do, okay, over the many years they were in. And let's be honest, when it came to review, how far did they get with it? I think traveller sites, and that was it. They had several meetings on traveller sites, and that was as far as the review went. So actually, in the time that we've had, 2.5 years, I appreciate, you know, it may feel glacially slow, but in terms of how councils operate and all the work that has to be done, actually, that's a pretty fast delivery. So well done, and I say I would certainly be supporting that as both as a ward councillor and also as somebody who's on the Borough Plan Review Committee. Thank you.
Tromans.
And previously from Councillors Clark and Golby, yeah, proper real-world comments. Based on fact, based on what we all experience, based on the frustrations that we have to rely on other statutory organisations to deliver infrastructure. Yeah, only the NHS can deliver the health service for us. That, yeah, the clue's in the name, health service. Contrast that with the real world stuff we've just heard with the, I don't know what world, cloud cuckoo land, fantasy world where you can just stand up and, you know, mouth off and claim all sorts of things are linked, like it's just crazy. You know, I think the reason why, after all the years that, you know, there's been a Green member in Weddington, got so little done, nothing achieved really, but yet other people have been able to come in and sort things out very quickly. I mean, you mentioned sewage on Weddington Road. Our MP got it sorted. 2 minutes. You couldn't sort anything out in 10 years. Look at all the things that have happened in Weddington. We have got a GP surgery in my county division of Weddington, up on St Nicholas Park now, in mine and Councillor Clark's Borough ward. We have worked to get schools developed. The school to come forward at Top Farm. Lower Farm Academy has been put in place. The GP land is still there, and because the NHS aren't delivering on that directly through a CCG level, I've spoken to individual partners of the GP surgeries that are a success in the wider area, informally to say, is there any way that you guys might want to take on a satellite site? We're trying to find, we're working very hard individually as council members, and I think that's probably true across parties as well, and very hard as a corporate entity as the Borough Council and the portfolios and the Cabinet are, and the work that Councillor Smith has had put in with the planning team to try and bring all this forward. This is earnest, real-world stuff to make things better, to have a proper plan that's a first-rate plan. The previous one was described officially as third-rate, and that's right, and we're suffering from it, nowhere more than in Weddington and St Nicholas that I represent. But what we're doing is something positive and real world to fix it and make it better. And we are leaning on those other entities that have to supply the infrastructure. We do have a proper infrastructure plan now that we scrutinised at the Borough Plan meeting. It can't be delivered by us. To say it can is a falsehood, is to mislead, as has so often been done by the Greens, the public. It's grossly misleading. When you have been told and been shown the evidence month in, month out, year in, year out, and you stand up and you lie to the public and you mislead them, shame on you. This is getting something done. The borough plan was the single most important thing in our campaign to win control of this council, and we did it. And we're delivering on that borough plan. We're sorting it out for Nuneaton. We're sorting out the regeneration of the town centre, and we're sorting out planning. The nonsense and the scaremongering and the blatant falsehoods that we hear so often, it's just, what must the public think? They see people trying so hard, and then someone else just trashes everything, talks the borough down, and just makes up seemingly anything they like as they go along. Oh, I do hope after the next election there is a different councillor for Weddington. I think the public deserve it.
As a Condacor, is it a matter of personal explanation?
Yeah, it's a matter of personal explanation. I did actually arrange for the medical centre on St Nicholas Park to be open when I was county councillor, and I had negotiations with the CCG as was.
Explanation?
Yeah, point. If you can't prove that that GP surgery opened solely because of you as a county councillor, you should resign. You cannot stand up and make all sorts of claims. Prove it to the public or resign.
I think we need to leave it at that. Thank you. If there's no other member wishing to speak, Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak?
How many times do we have to hear Councillor Condacor in this chamber flip-flop from one position to another? 2 councils ago, I think it might have been, Councillor Condacor stood in that very position and said, finally admitted, and it's been recorded, it's on camera somewhere, the borough plan sees a reduction in numbers. Which is the truth, by the way. Then tonight he stands up and says there is no reduction in numbers. He says that he wants a first-rate borough plan, which I agree with, and I think we are getting. But then, in February last year, well, this year, when we did the budget setting process, where do we get the money for that? He takes over £100,000 away from the budget to do that, when we have over 15 policies that need to be reviewed and rewritten and updated to make our borough plan sound enough to put before the inspector so it stands a fighting chance of being held to be sound. Where does that come from? Thin air, Mr. Mayor. It has to be paid from somewhere. And he was going to remove that money from the budget to do it. Now, he he says that we have been slow in doing the borough plan review. The planning inspector, when he reviewed it in 2019, said, and I quote, that our borough plan should be reviewed by 2021 at the latest. That was not done by the time we took control of this authority. We have had to come in and basically push things from the get-go to try and get things moving. And Councillor Smith has gone great guns to get that in very trying circumstances, bearing in mind that the team that he inherited was demoralised and understaffed and needed structure and leadership, none of which it had before, and all of which Councillor Smith has so ably provided. And I think Councillor Kovetkovic put the nail on the head with this. We are now, as Nuneaton and Bedworth, a leader, not a follower, in Warwickshire and Coventry. For so long, we followed behind like the little dog Toto, behind everyone on this magical yellow brick road to try and sort out the borough plan. And what did we end up with? We didn't end up with Emerald City, we ended up with Labour's borough plan. We had to try and fix that, and we can't just click our heels 3 times and say there's no place like home, Mr. Mayor. It takes hard work and effort. And how often was Councillor Harvey in that room actually standing up for Nuneaton and Bedworth? I think the minutes show he was there once, maybe twice, of all those meetings held about where the houses should be distributed. And who suffered because of that failure of leadership, Mr. Mayor? Not Labour, not Councillor Harvey, and not everyone who blindly voted through the borough plan in 2019. It was the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. We had to take 4,000 extra houses from Coventry because they couldn't calculate properly. And it's all of a sudden we have Councillor Condacor saying, well, the migration numbers are going to come down in Coventry, which I actually hope they do. But last time I checked, the Green Party was pro-migration, wanting the numbers to actually go up. Now, we actually have taken a no greenbelt approach in designing the borough plan. And I am pleased to say that not one piece of greenbelt has been declassified for this borough plan, something Labour couldn't achieve when they were in control. And actually, it doesn't take Carol Vorderman to work out the maths at 525 houses per year, which is what we do need moving forward, compared to over 1,000 with the under-delivery we saw under the previous plan. That is a reduction. The laws of mathematics do not change just because Councillor Condacor says so. That is a reality. But it is this Conservative authority which is putting things right and putting the plans in place. Because let's not forget that, was it 2 or 3 years ago, Councillor Condacor submitted a planning application to convert half the town hall into a school. How on earth does anyone believe that this building is suitable for a modern, fit-for-purpose school? It is actually our plans, together with the County Council, that is putting in the provision for school places. Instead of having kids in Weddington and St Nicholas having to travel along the A5 into Hartshill, it is because we are working with our partners that will see a new school delivered on Top Farm. We've got 3 new primary and middle schools coming along in the area because we are planning for the future, not trying to put a headline solution in place which wouldn't work. I think perhaps it's Councillor Condacor that instead of trying to convert this place into a school, perhaps he should go back to school to learn the basic rules of mathematics. So I think, Mr. Mayor, that we should put this through and get it to the inspector as quickly as we can, because it's a first-class piece of work.
Conclude?
Yes. A lot's actually been covered by my colleagues, but honestly, Councillor Condacor either doesn't listen or doesn't understand, because he keeps repeating the same things. It doesn't make it true. He moans about the time taken to produce the plan. At a recent borough plan meeting, I recollect him requesting we actually stall the process, just in case there's a change of administration at the next election. A shadow portfolio, and he talked about how long the plan had taken before we took control. A shadow portfolio, I think I spent more time working with the then head of planning, shaping what this plan looks like, than the actual portfolio from Labour, because nothing was happening over there. And I had some really meaningful meetings, and in the months running up to us taking control, I was shaping what that would look like in that first consultation, which took place within weeks of us taking control. I know what a third-rate plan is. Labour produced one. I remember the meeting where their portfolio holder actually said a third-rate plan is better than no plan at all. And I have to agree with them there. But this is not a third-rate plan. It is a first-rate plan. Housing numbers. I don't know how many times we have to repeat this. From 1,000 down to 545 a year. In my books, that's a reduction. Greenbelt. He talked about Greenbelt. There is no Greenbelt in this plan. We are not removing another blade of Greenbelt. And we refuse to. Councillor Shechevich talked about Labour doing a bit of work, and that bit of work was around traveller sites. Well, they didn't resolve anything. It wasn't until we took power that I was able to trigger the traveller work that I've done, and we resolved the problem that had run for 47 years. We now have no unmet need for traveller sites, and that is the first time that's been achieved. They may have talked about it, they didn't achieve anything. Infrastructure. I've said it before, I've repeatedly said it, and he still doesn't understand it. Councillor Condical goes on about the need for this and the need for that. We don't deliver any of it. We identify the need to mitigate our plan, but we have no power to deliver any of it. Basically, this is a first-class plan. I'm really proud of what the team have achieved. They have gone above and beyond to deliver this plan. I know how hard they were. I'm receiving emails all weekends, evenings, late at night sometimes. My officers are still working to get this plan through. And I know there's a slight delay I didn't want from December to January, but it will be submitted in January. And I recommend this to the council.
I'll move to a vote. Those in favour as per the report as written. Thank you. Those against? Indeed. Do we have any Thank you. Do we have any abstentions? In which case that is carried. Thank you. So we can now move forward to item 11B, the Treasury Management's report. Councillor Croft.
And now we come to the really exciting thing of the evening. I present the report and the agenda, which, as you say, is our mid-year Treasury Management report, and that's our Treasury position and forecast as at the end of September. And I just hasten to add, which is what I always add, this is not a budget report, this is not what money is spent on, this is the management of the cash and the Treasury. And there's a few things I'd like to point out. The first one, obviously, section 3 and 4 of the report provide the usual economic update, given the background to the interest rates environment in which we have to operate. And section 6 of the report concerns the Council's current plans for capital expenditure, but I hasten to add, and this should be understood by everybody, this is based on the original capital programme that we introduced in the February budget. This does not take into account changes that are shortly to be announced as part of our comprehensive capital projects review. Note, Mr Mayor, this is a condition of our reporting. I am required by statute to bring this report to Council covering the first 6 months of the financial year and our projections as at that date. We cannot factor in decisions that have not yet been taken. Measure twice and cut once is a very good motto for this council to live by, and I wish I'd thought of it. There are a couple of other points I want to highlight. 7.2 of the report shows we've actually had less interest cost this year than we forecast. That's because we've not taken out any new debt so far, and we've had a greater return on our investment from our own investment portfolio, which is where we benefit from the higher interest rates at the moment. Section 9 discusses the council's debt position, and as I say, we are not taking out any new loans, and we are minimising the scope for doing so because interest rates remain so high, and that would have a serious impact on our general fund borrowing costs. We may well have to take out some new debt at the end of this financial year, but this is subject to any of the decisions that are going to be taken in our capital projects review, and I'd like to keep hammering that point. There's one final issue I do need to highlight, which is included in section 10 of this report, which is that the council is currently breaching its own policy on debt maturity. That is for the HRA and not for the general fund. That is concerning the proportion of our debts that are falling due over time. That's out of line with our currently agreed policies, and that's because all the way back in 2011-2012, when the HRA became, in the jargon, self-financing, where we effectively bought our own housing stock off the government, no provision was made to pay off the debt when it fell due. That was because it was assumed that the debt, every time the debt did fall due, we'd simply re-borrow, thus throwing the repayment further into the future and balancing out the proportion of debt that had to be repaid over time. Now, as I've said, Mr. Mayor, we are not taking out any external debt at the moment, or we're trying not to because of the current rates, and we've actually repaid the HRA debt, but to do that, the HRA has effectively had to borrow from the general fund through the internal borrowing. So while this has reduced our overall debt position, it's broken our policy rules. And I'll say, Mr. Mayor, I am pretty, well, I'll say astonished. I'm disappointed, but not surprised that that strategy was followed. Any council that had any sort of financial sense would have put a provision in place to repay debt that they knew was going to fall due. The fact that they did not, the previous administration did not, is further evidence of the rot in this council that I talked about earlier this evening. Needless to say, we will not be following that strategy in the future. Now, as required, I present the report.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Condacor.
Following the Treasury reports for almost 20 years, I think the first time I had a big debate upon it at Cabinet, I wasn't a councillor. It was in 2008 when the council wanted to put £3 million in our interest overseas accounts, which later turned out to be in Icelandic banks. The then Labour leader put £1 million in the Labour bank, in Icelandic bank, to be followed because the administration just changed in 2008 with Marcus Jones' administration putting another £2 million in an Icelandic bank. So my record on Treasury is really good. I say I was the only person to tell this council not to put £3 million in Icelandic banks just after Northern Rock collapsed. And so this report is really important. I agree with Councillor Croft, this is the most important report of the evening. And it has two elements to it. And the element we have an issue with, and Councillor Croft keeps saying we're going to have a capital review, is what the future borrowing is, not what it is at the moment. And I would really like the recommendation that we're being asked to vote on to actually to note the current position and actually note that the future borrowing requirement will be dictated by the capital review. Then we could all be happy. But as it stands, the way the system works, we're voting on this is the current position and this is the estimate of what's happening in the next 2 years, knowing that that is something that can't possibly happen. And I look back 6 months at the capital report when it was predicting interest rates would end up dropping to about 4.1%, 4.8%. And you look at this report and they're talking about 5 to 6% interest rates. That massively changes what we can do as a council. And it would be really nice if we actually got that documented. Sorry, I'm coughing. And it's really interesting to also separate out HRA. Because the HRA is paid for by the rents of the being things you build. So I'm very happy for the council to carry £50-odd million of HRA debt because we've got 5,000 houses paying for that debt. What I'm not happy about is large debts on the general fund, which are paid for by the 56,000 residents of this borough, unless the things you borrow for wipe their face. And this is what's wrong with a hotel. If you spend 20 million on a hotel and the hotel is only worth 12 million, for example, you've got £8 million of debt you've taken out that won't get repaid by the revenue from the hotel. And this is why I'm very interested in the capital review you're doing and why we should, if we accept and note this report. Also note the effect of the future year projections are total rubbish. And it's not entirely Councillor Croft's fault, because the Tory government and what Liz Truss has done and Britex has put permanent damage into our economy and our...
Vote, please.
And I think that do all the things we want to do. And I hope we do bring forward some of the projects as quickly as we can, but actually do them in a modest way. Which is why, yeah, the £30 million for the Bedworth Physical Activity Centre, yeah, that is a very hard thing to fund. So we need to do it as carefully as possible, and it's a pity we gold-plated the original one, and it was 36 million odd, but we really need to move forward and try and rationalise debt. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could all just speak to the item. That was a reflection, a report for us to note about what the Treasury position is. You know, we've just heard we haven't taken out any more debt. And we've also just heard from the Speaker urging us to move more quickly with some of the things that he's always opposed. I don't understand it. I think there's going to come a point, Mr. Mayor, where we probably are going to need to, at the start of a meeting, when somebody stands up and deliberately misleads again, we're just going to have to move that they not be heard from any further in that meeting. So I put the councillor on notice. If you do it again, I'll move that you're not heard from again. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
At Nuneaton Centre, I'm being misrepresented that I've been against these projects. I want them to move forward effectively. Thank you.
I think, to be clear, it's ironic that we do constantly hear the flip-flopping of negativity. Oh, but you can spend money on projects that I want, like windows, or, you know, like a marina in Whittleford Park. That would be acceptable. Crazy. So the reason why we are where we are with the HRA, again, that falls under the housing provision, which is mine, which is something that I talked about before. We are finding issues as we are reviewing. There were, I mean, I can only describe it as an abdication of leadership in previous years, because all of this should have been dealt with in previous years. We would not be in this position now had it have been. The financial position should not have been what it is now anyway, just to expect to get to the end of a period where you're supposed to clear your debts and then go, oh, actually, well, we've not factored everything in, so we're going to have to do another load of refinancing. That is not a way to run a financial organisation, as this one is. It's a really daft way of doing things. But the comments about the reviews and et cetera, well, I did say before, we keep lifting up the carpet and seeing what's been swept under there and put down previously. We're not sweeping the stuff underneath the carpet. We're throwing the carpet back and finding all these things that we have to deal with. Who would not want plain sailing in local government? I would love plain sailing in local government. It would be an absolute change, complete change, and it would be a bliss if we had a period of time that wasn't all over the place, unsettled, or we're finding things that we've got to fix. And I said this to my team a couple of days ago, but 2.5 years in, we're still finding problems, significant problems, because we are looking more in depth at the things that we have to look at. We are not just skating away and dealing with the little piddly things and ignoring the big things, because the big things, the little piddly things have built up and become big things that we are now dealing with. So we have to do the reviews. The position will change in the future as a result of those reviews. And we are finding things when we do the reviews that should have been dealt with years ago, should not have been put in place in the first place. I don't know how many times we've got to say this, and we are making sure that we're fit for the future. We've got to do that. It's incumbent on us to do that. So we are still cleaning up the mess, because we are still finding new things that are creeping out of the woodwork. The review will happen. It will happen, and again, I point to the acronym that I gave to people before. We have to have good information to make good decisions. If we haven't got good information, we cannot make good decisions. And I am, for one, not happy at making decisions unless I have all the relevant information I need to do that. So the position will change. We are telling people that. It's not like we're hiding things and then all of a sudden we'll pull the rug out later on down the line. We're being very open and very frank with the public. This is the position that we find ourselves in. These are the reasons why we're finding ourselves in, and this is what we're going to do to fix it. So I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wilson, do you wish to respond?
I have to say I was quite astonished at a statement that Councillor Condacor made a few moments ago, where he said he was happy for there to be a large £50 million debt on the housing revenue account. That's a £50 million mortgage on each and every single one of our tenants living in council-owned properties. And he argues about, with the general fund, how we should make sure that we can afford to pay off the debt that we incur as well as the interest. Well, actually, sound financial management does not differ between whether it's the general fund or the housing revenue account. Sound financial management is sound financial management, Mr. Mayor. If we should be paying off the debt and the interest in the general fund, we should be paying off the interest and debt on the housing revenue account. Because what we actually have here, Mr. Mayor, is a legacy of poor advice and poor decisions from 2011 and 2012 that the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth, who actually are some of the most vulnerable in our society, are actually paying for that legacy 10 years on, and actually that's going to be carrying on into the future. Because let's not forget that actually we have not paid one single pound off the debt of that £50 million if all we have done is paid off the interest. That means that if we want to build more council houses, which I fully and wholeheartedly agree with, and I know that Councillor Golby is fully behind and is working desperately to try and do that. But if we do not have the financial headroom to do so, because we've still got this large outstanding £50 million mortgage on the council housing, that means we can't help more people in the future. That is bad financial practice and bad financial management from the Labour Party opposite from when they were in control. Because I do want to help those people. And if you were to take out a mortgage now, yes, you can get interest-only mortgages, but let's look at it as if we were a person taking out a mortgage. Only those who are at the most riskiest end would ever consider really an interest-only mortgage without actually having some kind of capital payment off what you are taking, because it actually means you don't really own the property. You're just, in some way, just basically renting it, aren't you, and just paying off the interest. That isn't fair on our residents in Nuneaton and Bedworth, and that has forced us to actually technically breach our own policy. But I can assure residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth that we will not be making that mistake again, that we will not let Labour's legacy of failure continue to dictate how we operate the housing revenue account and provide that security for the interest for the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth, because Councillor Croft and Councillor Golby are taking this extremely seriously and have had several meetings with officers about this to ensure that we put the proper sound financial policies and regulation in place so that this does not happen again. Because what we're going to have to do now, if we can't actually figure out how to pay the capital off, is just refinance that capital and continue paying the interest. What we should do, and we're going to have to do, is refinance that capital, but we will have to find some way of bringing some of that capital payment down. I'm not saying we can pay all £50 million off at once, that would be ludicrous, but at least if there is a strategy to bring that down responsibly, so that actually, when we say we own however many thousands of council houses in the borough, we do own them, that we do own those bricks and mortar. They are ours in title, and we now need to back that up with the money. So I'm glad that actually, yet again, in a way, this rock has been overturned, or this carpet upended, so that we can actually get to the heart of some of these issues and address them, because the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth can't afford another Labour administration in Nuneaton and Bedworth. They need us here dealing with the real issues that matter to them the most. So I support the Treasury Management Report and hope that Council will follow suit.
Mark?
Things to say on this report. I will not be taking financial and treasury and investment advice from Councillor Condacor, the Wolf of Weddington, as he seems to have tried to style himself. I'm afraid he's not quite picked up how to play the stock market in a few years at Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. Now, Mr. Mayor, to pick up something that was said, and something that was said at Cabinet last week, of course we want to make sure that that we do not borrow too much for these large-scale regeneration projects, and that the income we receive offsets the payments we've got to make in interest, because borrowing is just delayed taxes. And I absolutely agree that we should not be putting borrowing costs on the people. That is why we have engaged in a review of the entire slate of our capital projects, because of the deterioration in the economic situation, which has threatened that principle. Even Councillor Condacor has now acknowledged this. He acknowledged it at Cabinet last week, and in the debate just now. He's discovered offsetting income. He's discovered return on investment. It's a pity he didn't discover that a few weeks ago, when he suggested that the council should have borrowed at much lower rates and then just sat on the money, because then we'd have been paying interest rates without any sort of income from projects at all. And his suggestion that the council then just relend the money was cheerfully mad, and was completely against Public Works Loan Board rules. We'd have never been able to borrow anything ever again. And as I said at the time, Mr. Mayor, I'm not a homeowner, but Councillor Condacor's policy would have had me take out a mortgage right now, just on the off chance I find somewhere I like. So, Mr. Mayor, this guy will say anything. He will say anything. I mean, you know, he complains about overspending on projects, but then it's fine when he wants to spend £1 million on windows for the town hall, or he wants to keep putting in cycle lanes. And how many was it he saw? Three in the town centre the other day. Great market for that, Mr. Mayor. He whines about officer capacity and lack of progress on things, but then he calls in all the planning applications because he wants to make a point and throw his toys out the pram that people won't listen to him. And by the way, Mr. Mayor, I'll just put this on the public record. I'll say this parenthetically. Last week at Cabinet, Councillor Condacor claimed that officers were refusing to meet him to discuss his shadow budget proposals. That is not true, and I will put it on the public record that it is not true. And the way that he tries to attack people who cannot politically defend themselves is pretty low. He talks about optimism bias and that other people believe things that are convenient to them when But he carries on with his scheme that would flood Whittleford Park, and everybody else has got the numbers wrong on it. You know, he's got them right, but everybody else has got the numbers wrong. You know, he talks about the borough plan being too delayed, and we've not got a good borough plan, or it's too far behind schedule, when he took the borough plan budget out in his own proposals last February. Mr. Mayor, and back in the old Labour days, he complained about the Civic Hall being too much, and there should be investigation into the Civic Hall and the cost on the taxpayer. And now, Mr. Mayor, he complains that we shouldn't be putting it out to community groups who will run it. Mr. Mayor, this guy will say whatever suits his purposes at the time, with no consistency and no integrity. And the more people see him around the borough, the more his political career will recede into the darkness where it belongs. Mr. Mayor. Now we get this, back to the point, we get this squeaking from the cheap seats over there, but some of us have actual responsibilities to the taxpayers of this borough, and I have spoken before about how we need to achieve a critical balance between the need to be bold to regenerate our town centres and the need to be prudent to make sure that the whole thing doesn't actually fall apart on the finances. As the economic conditions change, that balance will change, and I will not shrink from any decision, however unpopular, that needs to be taken to reflect it. We saved Nuneaton and Bedworth from bankruptcy in 2021-22 when we inherited the mess that was the council's finances, yes, after COVID-19, but also after 45 years of the Labour Party and their drift and their mismanagement. We changed course in 2023 when we had to respond to the shocks of inflation, war, and a stagnant economy. And as the interest rate and inflationary environment change, we will adapt again with the forthcoming capital review. Mr. Mayor, when we have the full facts, we will tell the people the truth, and the people will be our judge. And when that happens, we will see what Councillor Condacor has to say about it. But otherwise, I move the report.
At that point, I'll take it to the vote. All those in favour of the report as written? Those against? Vote. Indeed, thank you, Councillor Condacor. Abstentions? In which case that document is carried. Thank you. That is the end of the agenda for this evening, and I thank you very much for all your attendance. And everybody have a happy Christmas and a good New Year, and we'll see you back again at some stage in the new year. I thank you.